from me, Hermione Coburn at the Science Museum in London, and welcome to Resource Review. We're here to provide you with a guide to new and interesting teaching resources. So if you're looking for a new bit of software, or some textbooks, or even a website that's relevant to your subject, then this is the programme for you. In each programme, we test out resources in the classroom, and today we're focusing on primary history. For today's programme, we went to Our Lady of Victories Roman Catholic School in Kensington, London, and we gave the teacher 3 resources. Firstly, a book called The Life and World of Henry VIII, published by Heinemann. A second book called The Terrible Tudors, part of Terry Deary's Horrible History series. And thirdly, a CD produced by Copycats. Now, which of these resources will be worthy of our resource review recommendation? Well, with the help of our panel and our history specialist for the day, we'll find out at the end of the programme. But first, let's start with the books. The Life and World of Henry VIII, being used by Fiona Sinclair in her history lesson. This is a biographical text which introduces and explores the life of Henry VIII while placing him in the context of his society. It draws on contemporary sources to support the text and includes timelines, glossary and index. The second book is Terrible Tudors from Terry Deary's Horrible History series. This book combines historical facts and explorations with a Roald Dahl style gore factor. So let's see how both of these books performed in Fiona's history class.
Who in particular have we been looking at? Hebe. The Tudors. In the lesson we used The Life and World of Henry VIII, and this was a really, really useful reference tool. The thing I like about this book is that it has lots of portraits in it, and a lot of the time in history we're looking at portraits for evidence for the children to investigate and build up their own pictures of the characters involved. I also thought the fact that they've got a timeline at the back was ever so useful.
My favourite is this because it tells you the timeline and it tells you when was Henry VIII born, when it was the War of Roses.
The children were really into looking at the pictures and thoroughly enjoyed it. But if you wanted to use this book in your class, then you really have to do the work on it yourself to bring out the activities for the children to do. We used Terry Deary's The Terrible Tudors in this lesson, and the children just loved it.
Look, it says, Margaret Harker, I found you guilty of witchcraft. You shall be taken from here to a place of execution. There you shall hang by the neck until you are dead.
And there was a really, really useful chart in there with a key which shows exactly what happened to each wife, and we used that. However, I don't think there was an awful lot more about the wives as such in this book, but I think it's going to be an absolute gem when it comes to doing crime and punishment, Tudor medicine, and how people lived in Tudor times.
So we've just seen The Life and World of Henry VIII and The Terrible Tudors in use in Fiona's history class. And to help us discuss the performance of those 2 resources, let's turn to the Resource Review expert panel. Now, on my right, I've got Ben Walsh, teacher and author, Baldev Singh, winner of the 2004 Teacher Award for Innovation in Education, Roy Watson-Davis, advanced skills teacher, and our history expert for the day, Jared Brading, who's also deputy head teacher of St Mary of the Angels School in Bayswater. Now, Jared, if I can ask you first, having seen the resources in use, what are your initial thoughts about the 2 books?
The first book is very good resource material. As a teacher, you have to look at the book, make your own worksheets or ask your own questions about the book, which is all extra work that you have to do. But it's excellent in placing Tudor society, in understanding about Henry VIII in society. The second book is a very popular book. All the children love it. They love the gore, they love the facts, they love the number of minutes that the heads twitched after they were detached from the body, the number of lice that Henry VIII had on the Tudor times. But again, it's not a very good classroom resource.
So, Roy, what do you think? Do you think Terrible Tudors might be preferable in this context?
I think Terrible Tudors is a great book. Kids love Blood and Gore, but the other book was quite good too. One of the things that the teacher flagged up as a problem was actually a really interesting line of inquiry. And actually didn't need any more work. Why are there no portraits of two of the queens? See, primary school kids, I guess, think teachers know everything and think that history is kind of there. And actually to start with a book that doesn't have pictures you'd expect to have in it is actually quite an interesting line of inquiry.
So you think the pictures aren't there and you have to explore why?
Yeah, you have to look at survival of records in history. Kids kind of assume that we know everything, and we certainly don't. But with the Terrible Tudors as the kind of contrast, the two things work quite well, because the Terrible Tudors have cartoons of the two queens in, and then the kids can start looking at, well, are these cartoons right? Why aren't these cartoons in the other book? You know, and that kind of line of inquiry is very, very useful for little kids growing up trying to find their way through history.
Ben and Baldev, how do you rate using books of that type overall in history classes?
I mean, I think what was interesting was the use of a timeline in there. And that was just a wonderful way of actually exploring a book, and having the glossary and the timeline at the back, I think was a very powerful way to explore that book. So I think it's a fantastic resource, and to have that in a book, I think certainly makes learning very enjoyable, and as one of the students talked about there.
I thought what comes across is the way that the two resources actually complement each other. All of the material in Terry Deary's book is correct, but it's also carefully selected to increase the ooh-ah factor. The second book, I think, was very interesting in the way that it complemented the first, in that although the teacher made a very valid point that there isn't a sort of an inquiry process in the book.
Yes, no questions.
That's right. I actually think in some ways it clearly wasn't designed for that purpose. It was designed to be a reference and to be a supporting resource within a wider framework. In some ways, I think the Terry Deary book provided that framework of a curious interpretation, leaving some gaps maybe, leaving some holes, which this more kind of respectable book was able to fill in.
Well, I'm really delighted about how positive our panel have been about both our resources, and it seems to me that Terrible Tudors could be in the running for a resource review recommendation. But before we do any final recommending, let's go back to Our Lady of Victories School and see the third resource in action. That's the CD-ROM from Copycat. Copycats produce CDs of worksheets, fact sheets and images for a variety of subjects and topic areas. Their CD on the Tudors covers the discovery, invention, treason and divorce of the Tudor age. Let's see how Fiona got on with the Copycats resource.
I will give you some little cards like this. In this lesson, we use the Copycats CD-ROM, which is a really useful resource which is full of worksheets. I used a particular worksheet which was about Henry and his 6 wives. And it's one of those worksheets where it actually suggests on here that you cut everything out and sort all the information with the right wife. Children really enjoyed doing it, and I think it's a really useful thing to do. So if you're looking for a lesson or you're just looking for an idea, then I would definitely look through this to get some good ideas and then make your lesson plan from it. When you're using the worksheets, though, I noticed that there might be a couple of discrepancies on here. First of all, just for example, on this one, they repeated 2 of the details twice, so I had to cut that out and remove that myself.
I think that really is Jane Seymour. Jane Seymour had a look.
We had to be careful because some of the details on the worksheet were actually different from some of the details that we found in the textbooks.
I just got a bit confused there because it said 1536.
I know, that was a tricky one, wasn't it? But you worked it out, well done.
No, that's Jane Seymour. That's Anne She's so ugly. Yeah, that's so ugly. I'm doing the
So that was the Copycats CD in action. Jared, having seen that second part of the lesson, what are your thoughts?
The Copycat CD is a very, very useful tool for the very busy primary school teacher. It's got instant photocopy resources at your fingertips. You can access it in your lunch break, knock up a half an hour lesson. It's very good to fill in the gaps that perhaps the other books leave out. It's also very good as an assessment tool. You can run off a worksheet, ask the children to do a quick test sort of thing, and assess them on how much they've understood over the course of the topic. It's quite good for that idea. It's very good for the busy primary school teacher.
Now, there did seem to be a problem with accuracy. How important is that? Does that confuse your students?
However, as I'm sure Roy would say, that would lead to a very interesting area where the children could go and discover what the correct date should be, and at least its own sort of historical inquiry.
I think that if there is a deliberate mistake and it is put there and alerted to the teacher that there is a mistake, and that's the fun activity.
To be fair, from the film, we just saw discrepancies between resources.
But there were also...
Surely that's a history skill, though. The kids will have 3 books in front of them, and these 2 say this and this says this. Good history, those 2 must be right, let's check it.
And
I mean, it's not spoon-feeding like, I'm the teacher, I tell you the right date.
I mean, I think the CD actually is very valuable, as Jared said, also from a time point of view. A busy teacher wants, to have an activity which will actually bring that topic alive.
So just before our final recommendation, there's a chance for Jared to give us a resource review roundup of alternative resources for primary history.
Yeah. One of the best things I found lately is the Teacher's Guide produced by the Hampton Court Palace. There's nothing better than going to the Hampton Court itself, but the second best thing is to get their Teacher's Guide. It takes you through a lot of very detailed factual information. There's activities there that you can do. It's also a very good way of planning your trip. I know it's very London-centred, but you can come there for the day and have a fantastic day at Hampton Court Palace. And their Teacher's Guide is very, very useful background information on the Tudors.
Okay.
Secondly, there's a very good website called www.brims.co.uk. They have a good section on the Tudors, very interactive section on Henry VIII and his 6 wives. You can watch them being beheaded live on screen, and again, have some useful activities. And there's a good book list at the end for teachers to look at and perhaps take it one stage further. The final one was it's produced by Zigzag. It's called The Tudors. Zigzag The Tudors, produced by Logotron and the BBC. It's an interactive programme that gives you a chance to experience Tudor life, put you in a Tudor village, and it's quite a nice resource, that one.
Okay. Well, details of all the resources that we talk about on the programme can be found on our website, which I'll give you at the end. But now it's the moment you've all been waiting for. We're going to give you our resource review recommendation based on the 3 resources that we tried out in the classroom. And to recap, they were the 2 books. Firstly, The Life and World of Henry VIII. Secondly, Terrible Tudors by Terry Deary. And thirdly, the CD from Copycats. So, Jared, our history expert, I'm going to put you on the spot. What is your verdict?
I'm going to go for the Copycat CD. Simply because in the primary school today, time is of an essence sometimes. We need to pick up a resource, use it quickly, deliver the lesson fast, and that's the ideal for that's the situation.
So the resource review recommendation for primary history is the CD from Copycats. Now, details of all today's products can be found on our website, and that's teachers.tv/resource review. Or if you've got a query, you can email us at resourcereview@teachers.tv. So that's all from me and our expert panel. Until next time, goodbye.